in some ways this is a love letter to RPG video games. Hi guys, welcome back. Today I'm here to talk about The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. The Starless Sea has been a highly anticipated second novel from Erin Morgenstern, the author of the Night Circus. So it's interesting because going into this, I didn't necessarily have super high expectations. I know that the Night Circus is a much loved book. For me, it was fine. It wasn't a favorite, but because I knew this was going to be a popular release, I was still interested in checking it out, and the premise sounded interesting. I was kind of surprised to find myself absolutely falling in love with this book as I was reading it. This is probably the slowest that I have read a book in a really long time. I think I spent 11 or 12 days reading this book and just like savoring it. And I think for me at least, this is going to be joining a list of all-time favorite books, along with things like The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, which if you've been following this channel for a while, you will know is very high praise. Now, that being said, as with any book, this book is not probably going to appeal to everyone, so I wanted to make a video talking about what this book is, what it isn't, giving you some idea of what to expect if you're interested in picking it up, and try to get some idea of whether it may or may not be for you. And then for those of you who have read it, I wanted to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of why I think this book is a masterpiece, why I loved it so much, and why it was exactly my sort of book, regardless of whether or not it's going to be everybody else's book. So The Starless Sea is a sort of literary fantasy that is part mythology and fairy tale, part mystery. There's a lot of moving pieces here that you have to kind of put together, and a lot of revelations that come through the book very slowly over time. I am somebody who loves this sort of book that kind of meanders through a world and you slowly piece things together and figure it out how different characters and different elements of the plot fit together. I love books like that. They're often among some of my favorites, and for me also offer a lot of rereadability. I knew halfway through this book that I already was going to want to reread it, and I'm hoping in December to maybe listen to the audiobook, because it's one of those books where you could read it multiple times and get something new from it every time. And now knowing the ending and knowing some of the revelations that come in the latter portion of the book, I would love to go back and reread it and see how all of the different pieces fit together, knowing some of that information. Many of my favorite books do this sort of thing. That being said, there are a lot of people who don't like that in their reading experience. They prefer things to be a little bit more linear and straightforward, instead of it being so many different pieces that you're not necessarily going to catch the first time around, or that you have to kind of like hold together and figure out. If you don't like books that do things like that, The Starless Sea might not be for you. But if you do like books that do that, if you like books that feel like fairy tales and integrate mythology and symbolism with interesting characters and lots of intricate pieces to it, then I would definitely recommend picking up The Starless Sea. In some ways, this book is a little bit hard to describe because it's got so many different characters and moving pieces to it, but the main character that we're following through this book is a young man named Zachary, as an adolescent saw a door to another world painted in an alleyway, but chose not to open it. And now he is a graduate student, and perhaps there will be another opportunity to open a door into another world and get pulled into a kind of dark web of mystery and magic and lots of different players in this game. There was a lot in here and a lot of interesting sort of thematic material, but one thing that I noticed early on in the book that I thought was interesting is our main character, Zachary, is a queer young man of color. We don't know exactly what he is, but from what we gather through the book, it sounds like he's probably mixed race with some African-American heritage, and he is gay. He's at an elite university in graduate school, and I think that, along with other characters and the way that they fit into the story, is really interesting thematically, because often she's sort of playing with expectations that people have about who should be like what and what kind of world they fit into and what their interests should or shouldn't be and the choices they should or shouldn't make, and that often people will defy those expectations, and I think it's interesting. I also kind of love that the person driving all of this is a queer man of color. It feels kind of subversive in some interesting ways. There's a lot here that you could unpack and like discuss, and this is part of why I want to reread it, because I feel like there's so much to take in. It's hard to get it all in one go. But I loved it so much. The experience of reading this for me was so magical. I was so swept away by it. It's been a long time since I've read a book that has given me that experience with reading it. I will say up front, this book is not going to be for everyone. There are going to be people who are going to say that this is too slow, that it's boring, that there's not enough plot. For me, I disagree. This is like perfect for my reading taste, but it is definitely not a book that you can read quickly. It's 500 pages. Normally a book like this I would finish in like 3 days, and I took a week and a half to read it on a first read. I could probably get through it quicker on a reread, but this is not the sort of book that you can just push your way quickly through. It's something that's meant to be savored and engaged with and discussed. So again, if you're looking for a quick, fun fantasy that's a quick trip into a magical world that doesn't really require you to think a whole lot or put lots of pieces together, the Starless Sea isn't really going to be for you. But if you do love those things, and also if you love video games, which I do, definitely check out the Starless Sea. And this is one of the things, like, I already loved this book, and sort of the like cherry on top was the fact that in some ways this is a love letter to RPG video games as a form of storytelling. It was interesting to me too, reading the author's acknowledgments at the end of the book, because she talked about how getting into Dragon Age Inquisition is what made this book really find its footing. And I love that. So Dragon Age is one of my favorite video game franchises. I love it so much, and Inquisition is amazing. And you can so see different things in this book, scenes and plot elements that are very, very evocative of that kind of video game play. Things like a statue holding out her hands, and the character has to figure out what goes in her hands to open a secret passageway to another place. That's like one tiny little example, but there's a lot of that where it feels like quests and side quests, and this concept of all stories being the same, which I think is really interesting, because I think in a video game it's similar, where you can play it as different characters from different perspectives and make different choices, and the outcomes might be different depending on the choices that you make in this kind of game, but it's all the same story. And I just love that so much. So if you play games like that, I think you will find a lot to love in this book. But even if you don't, if you're just a reader or a person who loves storytelling and the art of storytelling and interactive storytelling in different ways, I think this will probably appeal to you. I loved the way that the book ended. Like, it took a long time to get there, and I recently watched a review on this by Sam from Thoughts on Tomes, and she said she felt like the ending of this book felt very earned, and I would agree with that. I think that that is true. It does really feel earned. I love it. The imagery and metaphor in this book is so rich, and it's obvious that she spent years and years crafting this. This is not the sort of thing you could write overnight, and no wonder we've been waiting so long for her second book. It was well worth the wait, and one that, at least for me, is going to be joining my list of all-time favorites, and this is absolutely a book that I want to reread multiple times. If I can find this space, I'm hoping to maybe listen to this on audio in December, just because I want to live in this world again and catch more things with it the second time around. So yeah, The Starless Sea surprised me so much and is basically my perfect book. But I also know that that is not going to be the case for everybody. If you didn't particularly like the Night Circus, neither did I, and I still really loved this. That said, I can tell that it was written by the same author. There are some similarities in terms of style and tone, but in many other ways this is very different. Both books are a standalone. It is not set in the same world, in case you were wondering. Yeah, I guess that is most of what I have to say without getting super spoilery, but if you have read The Starless Sea and you need somebody to talk to about it, or you have theories or questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I am happy to chat about this. I actually did this as a buddy read with Isabella from the Feminist Bookworm over on Instagram, and I think that was a really great choice. I think this is a great one to sort of read with other people and discuss with other people, because there's just so much happening here and so much to like piece together. But I loved it so much. Okay, I will end this there. Talk to me in the comments down below. Let me know any of your thoughts or feelings on the Starless Sea. Based on this review, is this something that you are interested in reading? Have you already read it? And if so, let me know what you think. And for your question of the day, do you play RPG video games? Let me know. Do I have any gamers out there? It's not something I really talk much about on my channel, partly because it's not something I get to do all that often these days with having small children and all the reading that I do, but it is something that I love a lot, particularly Dragon Age. And I'm like so sad that we're not getting another Dragon Age game anytime soon. So that is a bummer. Anyway, I loved the Starless Sea. Talk to me in the comments down below. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.